Hello, hello, hello. I hope you're all having a fantastic Saturday. Let's get started. Chapter 16. To Challenge Utopia. Derek suddenly acted on another impulse. With effort he rolled onto his side and got his aching legs under him. Then he launched himself at Jeff without warning, reaching for Jeff's throat as if he wanted to strangle him. Just as he got his hands around Jeff's neck, Pei gently grasped his wrists. Even at the slight pressure, Derek screamed and fell back, drawing his arms away with his hands limp. Then he collapsed to the ground with his eyes closed. "You did it again!" Jeff cried, not too loudly. "You've really hurt him this time," said Ariel. "This is an acceptable move," said Pei. "I have prevented greater harm to this human by making a less harmful move to the one attacking him. No violation of the first law has been made." His confidence was returning. Derek opened his eyes, not otherwise moving. Jeff looked helplessly at Ariel. "You overdid it," said Ariel excitedly. "Look at him. That's not called for." "That's right," Jeff declared. "Stopping him with reasonable force is all right, but this is something else." Pei looked down at Derek. "I could not have hurt him. I was gentle." "Not gentle enough," Ariel wailed. "That's twice you've hurt him. You just don't understand how fragile humans are." "That's right," said Jeff eagerly. "That's the problem. If you've never had contact with humans before, that explains it. Suppose you shut down until your judgment's fixed up, or something." He shrugged lamely at Ariel. "It's your judgment," Ariel agreed. "That must be faulty at the core, so to speak. You can't risk harming a human because of that, can you?" "Perhaps you have a point." Pei's voice grew faint and he froze in place. "Pei, are you awake?" Ariel asked cautiously. "Pei, if you can hear me, I order you to say so," said Jeff. When Derek didn't hear anything, he forced himself up on one elbow. "Hey, it finally worked." "I guess it did," said Ariel. "Then it should work again," said Jeff. "And now that we know what it takes, we can refine our scenario." "Let's get back over to that road they're taking," said Derek. "Can you help me up?" Yet again, Jeff and Ariel helped him to his feet and supported his arms over their shoulders. The trio shuffled back to the one road that these humanoid robots were using for their trip down into the valley. There, Derek once more sank into the ground. Jeff and Ariel this time paced nervously between the high stalks on each side of the furrow. "Maybe we ought to move on," said Ariel. "Isn't one mugged robot enough? I mean, one murdered human and one murdered robot caused major crises in Robot City before." "That's a good point," said Jeff. "Maybe we could drag him over here where the next migrating robot will be sure to find him. But we can move on, keep ahead of the hunters." "I can't help you drag him," said Derek, "and he's pretty big. I doubt the two of you can get him all the way over here." Jeff ran a hand through his straight black hair and sighed. "You're right. It's been a rough day already, and we may have a lot more running ahead." "One more robot," said Derek. "That's all we need." "What are you talking about?" Ariel demanded. "If we just stand here and wait for the hunters, all this has been for nothing anyway. We have to get out of here." "Just one more robot. Instead of mugging it, we'll make sure it sees Pei back there. Then we'll move on." "Well, all right," said Ariel. "We'll wait a little while. But if nothing comes before long, we're leaving anyway. Agreed?" "Fair enough," said Derek. "But remember, it has to be one robot walking alone. I'm pretty sure that trying to fool more than one would be tougher because the others will observe and may spot the fraud. Let's not chance that." More robots did walk down the road before much time had passed, and all of them seemed to be migrating alone in the sense that they were not part of a crew or a team. However, they often came down the row in sight of one or more robots behind them, and Derek did not dare attempt the charade under those circumstances. "Remember," said Derek, "not much time has really passed for the hunters to get here. It just seems longer to us than it has been because we're scared." "Here comes another one," said Ariel, peeking around the leafy stalk in the corner of the row. "It looks good. I don't see anyone behind him yet." Jeff moved next to her to look. "Hey, Derek, I think this is it. We've got another one." "Finally. All right. Just before he gets here, I'll throw myself on the ground and you jump on me." He smiled wryly. "Not too hard, okay? I'm half dead already." "Derek, don't talk that way," Ariel began. "Hey, wait a minute," said Jeff. I know that robot. It's, what did I name it? Oh, yeah. Hey, Canhead! Jeff stepped out in front of the robot. The robot stopped suddenly, looking at him in some surprise. Are you addressing me? Identify yourself, said Jeff. I'm Energy Pack Maintenance Foreman 3928, said the robot. I'm following migration programming. Please allow me to pass. That sounds right. I'm sure it's you. Jeff nodded, studying the robot's eye-slit and general shape. Jeff, what are you doing? Derek asked. I know this character, said Jeff. I even gave him a second name. He was very cooperative. They've all been reprogrammed, Ariel said urgently. We're sure of it, remember? You won't retain anything from when we were here before. Let's get on with it. Come on, pal, remember? Jeff grinned. You will also answer to Canhead, won't you? Yes, I also answer to Canhead. Ariel laughed in surprise, stifling with a hand over her mouth. There! Jeff grinned at her and Derek. Derek shrugged at Ariel. I'm a human who was in a robot body before, said Jeff to Canhead. I gave you that name, and now I have further instructions. First, don't contact the central computer with any of this. Got it? He winked down at Derek. I used to say that on my last trip here, too. Understood, said Canhead. Do you remember me? Jeff asked. No. You don't? Jeff started. Then why'd you still enter to Canhead? I've got it, said Derek. All the robots of Robot City were reprogrammed through the central core, but their identities and designations were not changed. That would be counterproductive for Avery because the central computer still has to be able to contact and recognize all the different robots. I guess, said Jeff. I'm disappointed. Thought we had an old friend here. It's nothing, said Derek. You should have seen the greetings we got from Euler, an old friend of ours. He's the one who sent the hunters after us. Anyhow, he's being cooperative, said Jeff. Maybe we don't need our scenario. He turned to Canhead. We must show you something. However, before we do, we request your help. No, we require your help under the first law. How may I help? Canhead asked. This human is Derek, and he is extremely ill. He looks it, said Canhead. A comedian, Derek muttered. We need you to carry him for us for a while, said Jeff. Why? We are being followed by those who would do further harm, said Ariel, speaking slowly to get the right phrases. Exactly, said Derek. Who are they? Canhead asked. We can't say, said Jeff, but it doesn't matter, does it? Harm is harm under the first law. I am under higher priority programming to migrate, said Canhead. To violate it, I must understand the urgency of the potential harm. Hold it, said Derek. Let's combine the two. Look, you see where that ground dips over there? Yes. An inactive humanoid robot is lying there. After you take us to safety, we want you to report it to the central computer, but not before. You understand? So far, said Canhead. Before you do that, carry me and lead them on an evasive pattern toward your assembly point. That will combine your programming with our needs under the first law. Can you do that? My programming requires that I migrate directly, said Canhead. He turned to look at the dip in the ground. A humanoid robot has malfunctioned here. Sort of, said Derek. It's more like he was mugged. Mugged? In the sense of criminal violence? That's what I mean, yeah. Canhead turned his eye-slit directly down at Derek. Is this development directly related to the danger you are in? Yes, it is directly related, said Derek, but we don't need to discuss how. Will you help us or not? I believe this is sufficient reason to take you on an evasive pattern toward my assembly point. Canhead leaned down and picked up Derek with surprising gentleness, even for a robot. Follow me, he said to Jeff and Ariel. Derek let out a sigh of relief. As long as they were moving ahead of the hunters, they had a chance. And an invasive pattern taken by a robot might at least be the equal of the hunter's ability to solve it. It would be better than their own at any rate. He would instruct Canhead to drop them off before he reached his assembly point, and to keep his contact with them secret. At the time, he thought sleepily, he could cajole an explanation out of the migration programming out of him. Right now, he was just so tired. He was comforted by the strong, rhythmic stride of Canhead, and by the sound of the footsteps of Jeff and Ariel right behind them. News of the mugging of their victim was certain to reach Dr. Avery. What Derek needed now was Mandelbrot. Mandelbrot could contact the central computer and, unlike Canhead and the other Avery robots, he could He trusted to help without these convoluted discussions of the laws. Mandelbrot and Woolruff. He drifted off to sleep, wondering what had happened to them. Mandelbrot was standing motionless in a repair facility. The trip here had been a long one, covering a surprisingly long distance. He had been deposited here just a moment before by the helpful robot. He had successfully evaded the hunters behind him by dual moves. The first was having the other robot carry him to eliminate his heat trail, and the second was being identified as a malfunctioning robot. Apparently the hunters, with no reason to believe he was in need of repair, were acting under the assumption that he was still in full flight. He would have to move on before they thought of checking here. Mandelbrot also had to get out before the repair robots required his identification, and that would be any time now. At first he had been surprised by being set down and left to wait. The efficiency of the Avery robots had led him to expect immediate handling. As he observed the workings in the repair facility, however, he concluded that Robot City was, as usual, functioning under its own distinctive style of efficiency. The repair facility was processing a large number of damaged or malfunctioning robots. Mandelbrot guessed from the conversations overheard through his comlink that migration programming had largely been completed. Apparently only skeleton staffs remained anywhere in Robot City now. For that reason, most repair facilities had also been shut down. The robots being repaired here were either already assigned to those skeleton staffs, or they were being reprogrammed. Those that entered with migration orders had them purged and replaced in a pool to act as reserves for the skeleton staffs instead. So, Robot City intended to function without the migration robots for an extended period. Further, any robot that did not reach its assembly point within a short time would be reassigned. Mandelbrot concluded that he could not afford to wait here any longer at all, or he would risk being reprogrammed, and so lost to the humans as a source of help. Mandelbrot was standing by 4 of the robots. 2 were sitting because of mechanical failures that impaired standing or walking. The other 2 were standing, the extent of their malfunctions not visible. All of them had managed to reach the repair facility alert and functioning, just short of 100%. Mandelbrot observed the entire room for a moment. A couple of humanoid robots assigned to the facility supervised a large number of function robots doing the actual repair work. One function robot was rolling down the row of waiting robots that Mandelbrot was in, observing serial numbers or something, with an eye on a long, flexible tentacle. Mandelbrot turned and walked quickly out of the building. Outside, he mounted a slidewalk and began to run on it toward the mountains, now invisible in the distance. He knew the directions, but had to follow his memory of the ship view screen for the best route. "Stop!" called a robot on his comlink. "You are malfunctioning, and therefore endanger yourself by risking greater malfunctions. This is a 3rd violation that requires you to shut down." Mandelbrot broke his reception. Since he was in fine condition, none of that applied. He had known they would see him take off, and he was gambling that they would not place as high a priority on catching him as the hunters had. At worst, they would assign a hunter to catch him as a malfunctioned rogue instead of as an intruder involved with Derek. Ahead, he saw a tunnel stop. Without looking back, he leaped off the slidewalk and ran down the moving platform to the loading dock. Then he was inside a platform booth and had reprogrammed it to go as close to the mountains as it could take him. The trip would take some time. He opened his comlink again to reconnoiter. 2 general alerts were coming from the central computer with high priority codes. One was that the hunters were now seeking a malfunctioned robot who had apparently violated the 3rd law by running away from a repair facility. Because the force of the laws was involved, all humanoid robots were ordered to watch for him. His physical description was given. Since he had escaped from the repair facility before any scanning was done, they had no more to go on than that. But he was distinctive from the Avery robots even by sight. The second alert was that a mysteriously shut down humanoid robot had been found in the agricultural park. Nothing was known about the cause. The supervisors entered an urgent order that any robots with information about this development report it immediately. Total malfunctions of this kind were extremely rare in Robot City. Mandelbrot was sure that this one called up memories in the minds of the supervisors, and probably in Avery himself, of the robot murder that Derek had solved here. Mandelbrot, of course, was not bound by the instruction. He was sure that his human friends were somehow responsible, and he was also certain that the hunters would guess this as well. Nevertheless, none of them had proof. Mandelbrot also figured that the hunters would guess that the rogue robot was the same one they were hunting. It made no difference, since he had to avoid them either way. He now felt the first law impetus pushing him on, since the hunters were likely to be closer to the humans than he was. The platform booth continued to shoot down the tunnel toward the mountains. It was the fastest transportation he had, and it seemed painfully slow. Alright, and that ends this chapter. Only 4 more left. 4? Yeah, I think it's 4. Oh. No. Make that 3 more left. Alright, I hope you've enjoyed and have a no, it's 4. I hope you've enjoyed and have a fantastic day. Bye!